This is Destination Unlocked with me, Daniel Edward.
Just about ready to depart.
Please make sure your seatbelt is not fastened and do make yourself comfortable.
Well, welcome back to Destination Unlocked. Great to have you here. And today we're going to the south of Spain. It's an extremely hot part of the world, but my goodness, it's a gorgeous place to visit and with the most incredible history. I've been reading a lot about Andalusia in the south of Spain recently, and my goodness, it's fascinating. I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation, which is with the guidebook writer himself. I mean, you couldn't pick a better person to introduce us to an area than the person who's written the guidebook for it, of the Lonely Planet Guide to Andalusia. Today we're joined by Paul Stafford, who wrote the Seville chapters of the Lonely Planet Guide to Andalusia. Enjoy. So Paul, where are you unlocking for us today?
Today, Daniel, I am unlocking the city of Seville.
I think this is the most intriguing part of Spain. It's a very hot part of Spain, and I do avoid it at certain times of year because I would burn up like nobody's business. But the history and the culture of this place is magnificent. You've just got back from a research trip for an updated guidebook. What would you say are going to be the top highlights that are going to go into that book?
Well, it's one of those cities where the top highlights are the most popular highlights. It's one of those things where you think, oh, the cathedral, for example, it's going to be really busy. I'm going to have to buy my ticket in advance. There's going to be lots of people there. And yet it's still a major highlight because of the size of it. It's the world's biggest Gothic structure, for starters. And inside, you can just see this incredible, vast space that was created purely with this fervour. The constructors, or this is at least the theory behind it, said that people will think we were mad when they see what we built here. And it really is just an incredible structure. And then you have La Giralda, which is the main tower, which you can climb to the top of. I think it's about 400 steps or something like that. You're going to really feel it in that heat, especially in the middle of summer. But it's incredible. And that is a little hint, that Giralda, of what it used to be. It used to be a mosque. That's why I think this structure is amazing, because it represents the fusion of the Spanish Catholic and Islamic Moorish cultures that is on show throughout Andalusia, but I don't think really anywhere more impressively as it is in Seville.
I think that's the reason why I find it such an intriguing place, in the same way that I find Istanbul very intriguing, because the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul has a similar story, the opposite direction.
Yeah.
There it used to be a church, now it's a mosque.
Another magnificent, huge, airy building as well.
I don't believe we build like this anymore. It's a shame in a way. We build tall glass towers.
Yes.
And that's supposedly impressive these days. But the grandeur, the splendour that they used to build and have survived for centuries and still look just as magnificent as the day that they were designed.
So true. I don't know what upkeep actually goes into them behind the scenes, but to think that that huge dome has managed to stay in place with the original architectural features that were designed to keep it there. And the cathedral in Seville is the same. It's just this magnificent monument to faith. And the fact that it's in such resplendent condition still is probably owes to the fact that so many people visit it still. And so they're making quite a bit of money, I suppose, off just entry fees and things like that.
Though that's a fairly modern phenomenon, the tourist drive to the south of Spain for that cultural immersion.
It started in the late 70s because under Franco, Spain was locked down for many years. The package holiday phenomenon is really what opened Spain up. And it was in the Costa del Sol, mainly between Malaga and Marbella, that people started discovering Spain. And from the beaches that were the main draw, they then started venturing inland and saw the pueblos blancos, the little white towns and villages that are nestled in these mountains. And then they went a little further in and they discovered cities like Seville and Cordoba and Granada, of course. You still see people going for package holidays, but the vast majority of visitors to Andalusia are now going for those city breaks.
Right, the city break has overtaken the beach break.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's not all that close to the beach. For people who haven't been to the area or haven't looked at it on a map, you're still a good hour and a half from the beach.
Yeah, if you were to go to Matalascañas, which I would say is probably the closest beach, you'd probably be looking at about a 50-minute drive on a good day, maybe a little bit longer, but it's not too bad. But Matalascañas, for that reason, is a little bit like past its best resort, I would say. And it's primarily domestic tourism that feeds Matalascañas. Not really a beach destination, Seville. And it's one of the reasons why it's so hot, because it's kind of on the plains. But then north of that, you've got the Sierra Morena, which hems in the city, and Cordoba is even hotter. It's the hottest city in Europe. They just get these little nests of heat that doesn't really dissipate.
Oh my gosh, I call that prickly heat, because
Yes.
it starts to actually hit you like pin.
Yeah, you feel it. And one of the things about that part of Spain as well is you'd expect the heat to be at its height at around 2 p.m. like it is in the UK or whatever. It just keeps getting hotter until about 5 or 6 p.m, which is why people don't have dinner until 8. Restaurants don't even open until about 8 p.m.
Oh my gosh, I'd be starving.
The biggest meal of the day is lunch. It's kind of almost expecting the worst of the heat to be coming soon. People will head to the restaurant at maybe 2 p.m. and then that's the big meal that you take your time over. It's a long, slow meal. And then it's the little often tapas type dining that you'll get in the evening, where you might tapear, which is to go from one bar to another and have a little tapas in each place. Sadly, Seville isn't one of the cities anymore that offers the free tapa with every drink. That's kind of a dying thing, although you can still find it in places like Granada and Jaén, but in Seville you tend to buy the tapas that you'll have.
We're going to get more into food in a little bit. How can we not? But just to cover off some of the other architectural highlights that you've really got to see if you are visiting Seville, a place which struck me the most, I just think it's the most incredibly gorgeous scene, is the Plaza de España.
Yes, yeah. So this Plaza de España is a more modern construct. The style, I guess you would call it neo-mudéjar. Mudéjar is the fusion of Spanish and Moorish architectural styles. It's a kind of a post-Reconquista style of architecture. So the Reconquista was when the Catholic monarchs were retaking parts of Spain that were under Moorish control. So I think it was 1248 was when Seville fell back into Spanish hands. It wasn't until the late 1400s that Granada was returned to Spanish control, but Seville fell fairly early. But instead of driving out all of the Islamic artisans and things like that, they would employ them to work on the now Catholic palaces that they wanted to build. And so you had this sensibility, this geometric precision that a lot of the architects in the Moorish world had, and they would be fused with that kind of fervent Catholic sensibility, and you'd have these mudéjar styles. So the Plaza de España was actually built for the World Expo in like 1928 or 29, I think, just before the Wall Street crash. So it was a really unfortunate time for them. But it was this beautiful bastion of the modernist style that was going on, and then this mudéjar sensibility. And it's vast, isn't it? It's this kind of C-shaped building.
And I love the water that's been integrated into the design too.
Which is like a capital D-shaped canal, if you will, almost a Venice-like canal, and you can still hire a little rowboat and go for a little paddle out on the water. I don't know if this was the case for you when you visited, Daniel, but you'll often get flamenco performers who will just post up and do free shows for people. So that it's filled with this energy, and it's right on the edge of Parque Maria Luisa, which is this beautiful big green space that, especially in the summer when it's really hot, feels so much cooler, like a good 10 degrees cooler when you walk into that area. It's a lovely place. I often go there in the afternoon just to get away from the heat, but to be outside as well. I live there through the summer. So a great time to visit if you want quieter streets, because very few people go. The prices are very, very low. So as long as you set your day up, you can avoid the hottest part. But inside the buildings, it does feel very cloying if you don't have air conditioning.
That's a really interesting and almost intuitively backwards tip.
Yes.
Because everybody would think, summer will be peak season, so hot, it's going to be crowded, get away. Yeah. And it's not that.
That's when everyone is actually at the beach. So it's the one time of the year where you probably find more people at the beach than you would do in the cities.
That's a genius tip.
And it's genuinely significantly cheaper. Places that you would be paying maybe 150 to 200 euros for in any other part of the year, you'll probably get for maybe 50 to 100 euros instead.
That's a very good deal. Where else would you suggest for a highlight?
If you don't go to the cathedral, you must go to the Real Alcazar. It's right next to it, so they basically face one another. It's this sprawling set of palaces, essentially, that, aside from the Alhambra in Granada, the pinnacle of this mudéjar architecture, but also you've got the architecture that was created during the Moorish rule as well. So it was originally created as a home, really, for the rulers of Moorish Spain. And this set of palaces is really, for me, an architectural history of many centuries of southern Spain. There's some rooms upstairs that are used by the royal family still. And when they're not in residence, you can visit those as well.
The Spanish royal family is an interesting one, both for modern controversies and also their history. They had a fascinating relationship with the Pope. It's a very Catholic country, with the exception of the Moorish moments.
Yes.
It's been the most fervently Catholic country outside of Italy. And they were given special dispensation from the Pope to appoint their own bishops.
Yeah, I imagine there is still a very special relationship there. Spain is probably one of the most open-minded, free countries that I've ever visited. But there's still this part of society that is extraordinarily pious and traditional. And you're starting to see that kind of bubble up again at the moment. It's really interesting. Something like the Semana Santa. Seville has probably Spain's biggest Semana Santa, which is for the whole Easter week. The centre of the city is locked down completely and it is given over to parades and processions. And I was just there actually for the most recent Semana Santa, a fascinating experience because you just have tens of thousands of Nazarenos, who are these people that wear these pointed hats, like hoods that look slightly sinister if you're not from that world, and these long robes. And La Madruga, which happens on the morning of Good Friday, it basically starts at midnight and runs all the way through to 6 a.m. And it's this series of silent processions. So you have hundreds of thousands of people in the centre of Seville. And the centre of Seville is wonderful. It's this romantic, beautiful, old city centre that just goes on and on and on. And it's all cobbled streets. There's not a straight street in sight. It's a wonderful place to get lost. And you just have to find your way out of there. And that's part of the beauty of exploring the city. But these streets are absolutely packed with people. It's 2 a.m. You're exhausted. There's people everywhere. And then suddenly you'll hit the parade route and it'll just be absolute silence. All of these people just lining the road whilst all of the Nazarenos with their hoods are slowly walking with these big candles, huge candles that are about 5 foot tall and they're very thick and they slowly burn. And then you'll just get a saeta, which can either be a little song or a prayer from a balcony that will pierce the silence of these shuffling footsteps, or maybe a clarinet or something like that that will just do this brief flourish for a moment and then it's gone. And that almost underlines the silence. When that dies away again, the silence feels more profound. Everybody is so locked in that moment to this very historic, very traditional thing. You really feel the weight of Catholicism and what it means to a lot of people still in Seville.
It does sound very moving.
Yeah, it really is.
Are there other festivals during the year that are a good one to put in the diary that maybe don't exist elsewhere?
Sticking with April, 2 weeks after Easter Sunday, you have the Feria de Abril, which is this big festival in Seville specifically that always comes 2 weeks after Easter. And for a week, again, you have horse parades, you have people dressing up. It's a wonderful time to see the traditional flamenco dresses. And they all go to this big ground to the south of Seville, where there's a big fair, lots and lots of little tents. And each tent is usually run by a brotherhood. They're called hermandades, which are like these different religious brotherhoods. They're out in force and they have different colours and everything in Semana Santa, and then they have their own little place. Each tent will have drinking and merriment and dancing and singing, a lot of dancing actually, especially if you're invited in as an outsider, which can often happen if you just wander around. You could end up just being in one tent rather than wandering around for the entire evening, and it can be a really great time. And then another one is the Bienal de Flamenco. And that usually lasts for about a month in September and October usually. And it is this huge flamenco festival that takes over the whole city. It's the biggest flamenco festival that I know of in the world. And flamenco is such a wonderful art form. It's really complex. There's so many elements to it, from the palmas, which is the rhythmic clapping, to the dance, to the colourful dresses, the guitar. I would hazard a guess to say that Andalusia has the world's highest concentration of accomplished guitarists. Everybody seems to be a virtuoso. Whenever you go to an event and you just hear that incredibly complex form of guitar, finger-picked, often acoustic, it's just an incredible thing to sit back and let it wash over you.
I love the sound of flamenco guitar. I want to get a close-up of their fingers to see what they're really doing, but it's as if they're doing everything twice with two separate fingers. One finger is a quarter beat just behind.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And they're also often hammering out a beat with the palm of their hand. So you do have a raking motion, which will give you that brrring, but then also the finger picking is going on the side of that. It really can often sound like two guitars being played at once, but also with percussion.
Yeah.
And that's just one very accomplished player doing all of that in one go. I've tried myself to learn it, and it's beyond me. I genuinely cannot get all of that going in one go.
It's a lot to do. How, as a tourist, do you know which show to try and get to? What's going to be a rip-off tourist option and what's going to be something more authentic?
Oh, that's a really good question. I've been to a lot of different flamenco performances over time. And one thing that I would say is pretty true of all of them is that they're always really talented performers. So you will get a great show. I mean, I've cried at a flamenco performance before. They can be incredibly moving. Casa de la Memoria is one where you sit and you watch. And you're just present and you're silent. You're not allowed to take photos. You're not allowed to watch it through your phone. You're just there and you're present, and it just elevates the performances. So I'd say any place where phones are prohibited, cameras are prohibited, and there's no food or drink involved, those moments are always going to be more impressive than the ones where they're dinner and a show. And there's a lot of events where it's a dinner and a show. I attended one just the other week actually in Cordoba, and you spend half of the performance just trying to see past waiters. They're rushing around trying to get everybody their food, and there's like the sound of people eating and no one's really paying attention, and then there's someone leaning over your table trying to get a video, not paying any attention to the fact that you're just trying to drink in this performance. For me, those feel trashier in some way than the ones that are just about that performance and you're just supposed to be there in the moment experiencing it.
Talking food though, what should people keep an eye out for? Is there still a Moorish influence in the food as there is in the architecture, or is the food quite similar to the rest of Spain?
I would say the food traditions of Spain vary wildly from area to area. Andalusia is traditionally the most rural of the provinces of Spain. Bullfighting is also a big part of the culture, especially in the south of Spain, still holds on greater than it did anywhere else. And so some of the dishes that come out of the region are born in that kind of era of like bullfighting and then eating beef afterwards. So one dish that you might come across that is everywhere is rabo de toro, which is like a slow cooked oxtail stew. Wherever you stand on bullfighting, and I'm personally against it as a pastime that should be left in the past. But there's a lot of tabernas and tapas bars around the bull ring in Seville that do that dish very well. So if you're a foodie and you can separate the genesis of that dish from the actual tasting of it, then you can enjoy the best rabo de toro in those tapas bars around the bull ring. And then you have solomillo al whiskey, which is pork medallions in a broth featuring, they say it's whiskey, but it's more like a sherry brandy. And then you've got lemon and garlic. It's a really rich stew. If you're just wanting a light breakfast in Andalusia, the main thing to have is just a simple pan con tomate. You just get a mollete, which is a kind of special type of bread that is cut in half. You toast it, you put on a load of tomato, you drizzle it with the most amazing olive oil, a little bit of salt, and that's it. A really simple breakfast that everybody has in Andalusia. My favourite thing is bocarones. You can get them fried, but I prefer them in vinagre, which is like a kind of vinegary, oily thing that they're just immersed in, and they're delicious. And then salmorejo is probably the big thing that I would recommend. It's a bit like gazpacho, tomato and garlic. Like a soup, but a cold soup, and it's absolutely delicious. It's usually mixed with a bit of olive oil as well, and it's usually topped with boiled egg and jamon, You can ask for either or both of those toppings to be taken away, and that's how you make it either vegetarian or vegan. It's an amazing thing to have for lunch, sometimes alongside like tortilla de patatas or something like that. And that's the thing that I probably eat the most when I'm in Spain, because I'm a vegetarian. I've had my life where I ate all of those other dishes and I still have the memory of those, but these days I tend to stick with the less meat-based things.
Times have changed.
It's hard being in Spain, or France for that matter, and being vegetarian or vegan. It really is. It's tricky.
So how did you first come to Seville and get to love Andalusia as an area?
I was introduced through a friend when I was growing up. His family were partly from Andalusia, from Malaga. We grew up in a little town in northern England called Clitheroe, but they would frequently visit Malaga. And one year they took me, and that was my first experience of Spain. We flew into Madrid, and then we went all the way down through southern Spain and arrived through the mountains when suddenly Andalusia becomes green and the landscape is phenomenally beautiful. And then we arrived in Malaga, and I was a convert pretty much immediately. I ended up in Seville for the first time when I did a TEFL course, or a TESOL course, I guess is what you would call it now, just after I finished university, as like a kind of backup if I wanted to travel and I wanted to make some money. It was always this kind of thing that I had in my pocket. I could bring this qualification out, and I chose to do it in Seville. And I lived in the centre of the city, and it was a wonderful time. It was really good, and that's always been my go-to place now.
And so how did you then transition from going around traveling, teaching, to then travel writing and writing guidebooks to help other people explore the places?
So I actually never got to use that teaching qualification, sadly. I ended up going to South Korea randomly because I wanted to be an actor. That was my primary goal. And somehow I kind of got into acting in South Korea and just ended up doing that for 3 years. I came back to the UK and ended up at a film school as a screenwriter. That was in London, and it was extraordinarily expensive to just be a poor student in London. So I started finding other ways to make ends meet, and all of that travel, all of that time overseas, it just lent itself to a different form of writing, which was travel writing, and I submitted a few articles for places, and I ended up making money from that. And as I realized gradually and painfully, acting and screenwriting weren't particularly lucrative, especially to somebody with only limited experience, I just got more and more into the travel writing side of things, and then that just became a lifestyle. It started taking up all of my time, and I just realized I think I'm a travel writer now and I'm not an actor anymore.
Organically evolved, which the best things do.
Yeah, absolutely.
On your guidebook work, you have covered a huge spread of places.
Yeah.
Some writers will exclusively focus on one area, some will pick a region. You've been able to travel the globe. It's amazing.
Yeah, I guess the early formative years of just traveling around, I ended up living in a number of places. I lived in Mexico for a year as part of my degree. I went to India for 5 months after that, and then South Korea for the acting, as you do. So it just happened that I had a bunch of different places that I knew really, really well. My uncle, for a long time, was the lead photographer for Visit Scotland, so I had links in Scotland as well. So I had all of these areas that I knew pretty well, and the best thing you can do usually is find a place that no one else really knows very well. So I didn't write about Spain for a long, long time. I didn't write about Scotland for a long, long time. I've been doing it about 14 years now, but I started off writing about places like South Korea that I knew really well, but weren't well covered. Like England, for example, the majority of travel writers live in England. It's a very tough gig to get, is writing about England, because there's just so many people that have that experience, that are adept about it, and wonderful writers, and also have the links. But luckily, in about 2021, I managed to get my first guidebook in Andalusia, and it was, again, based on the fact that I knew Seville well, and I guess nobody else that had applied knew Seville in that way. So I was really lucky to just get my foot in the door, and I've been back every year for the last 5 years now and spent maybe a month at a time. It's been wonderful.
For people who are 14 years behind you and thinking they love the sound of this, they do go on travels themselves, maybe they have lived abroad already for 6 months or so. For people who are starting out, should they be looking on job lists for people advertising that somebody is looking for a guidebook writer in a traditional sort of job advert way, or do they go about it in a different way?
So I think the guidebooks come a little bit later if you've got a bit of a body of work already built up. So the best way to build a portfolio, I think, is to pitch ideas to editors about places that fewer people have probably been to, or if you have an amazing, unusual angle on something that is well known, then you can go about it like that and just start to kind of get one or two commissions here or there, because that'll really help sell you as an authority figure on the area. And I don't actually like using that term because I'm not an authority at all. When I go, I'm still there as a student in a way. I still want to learn everything I can, and I never like to think that I have this authority over an area or an expertise, because there's always something out there, and this is the beauty of travel for me. There's always something out there that will confound you, that will surprise you, that you haven't experienced or explored yet. Be fascinated in the world, seek out the human stories. I think with AI these days, AI is incredibly adept at taking information that is factual and condensing it. So those types of articles, more and more you're seeing, they're probably not written by humans in various outlets, well-known outlets. And I think that trend is only going to continue. But what you can write is your interest in the world. That's something that's bespoke, it's unique. Start with something that you would do, that you would happily pay for. That's how I did it. What would I pay for? And how do I get paid to write about the thing I would happily pay for? And then find the human story behind it, because it's really the human stories that move us and are unique. Is there something on the fringes of flamenco that is really unusual and is breaking from tradition? That kind of thing is always amazing. Or what's a type of food or an ingredient that is making its way slowly back onto people's tables, and who is growing that and why are they growing it? Is there a story behind that might be about climate change, and now suddenly this ingredient that wasn't able to be grown in the hills of the Alpujarras is now thriving? Little stories like that will really help sell your articles, and then from there you build up this fascination and understanding of that world, and then you can write the guidebooks because you've gone into that area with such depth and thought about it in a way that not everybody ordinarily would think about it. I always say that I live in Birmingham, but I'm probably one of the worst advocates for Birmingham in a way, because I've got my patterns. So I go to the restaurants that I love, and I tend not to go beyond that, because I love these places, these 5 places, and I know that they're always going to be really good. That Barber Institute for Arts over there, I could go today, but I'm going to be here tomorrow, so I'll just do it tomorrow. And now it's closed for repairs, so I can't go.
We don't appreciate what we've got so close to us because it's so available to us. We become a little bit blind to it. The story comes to me so much easier when I'm somewhere where I'm a little bit less familiar. It just jumps out at me. Oh, that's odd. Or that struck me. Oh, I wasn't expecting that. But when I'm walking around at home, I'm blasé. You don't realise that actually there is still a story in that.
Absolutely. You just have to find something that triggers your wonder and heightens your senses because it's something that's unfamiliar. Another reason I love to go in April to Seville is because you have the Azulejos, which is the blossoming of the orange trees. And there's this beautiful syrupy scent that fills the air for about a month of this orange blossom. It just adds this really rich sensory experience to the city that not every city will be able to provide you with.
I love the focus on different senses. It's not just what do you see, it's everything coming together. And yes, when you step away from home, all of your senses come alive again. It's a reinvigorating experience. Something that people may not know about you is that you're not just writing, you also create music.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's probably why I'm drawn to flamenco, the art form, because of that just beautiful sounds that they manage to create. I myself am less finessed as a musician. I'm an alt-rock musician with a band called Thwoar, Thwoar, which is energy, basically. Really good energy on the stage, just having a great time. A little bit of post-punk to the songs as well. That's another thing that I thought, oh, I'll do that on the side because that'll be interesting. And then I realised, oh, I just end up travelling all the time because of it. So now I have 2 jobs essentially that are effectively full-time, and both of them involve a lot of travel. I should have done something where I could stay at home a bit longer.
Yes, at least you can sort of double things up occasionally. Do you try and arrange your tours for places that you're interested to then write about?
Absolutely. I'm actually doing a separate guidebook right now in England, and part of the reason was I've been to Bristol because I really wanted to spend more time in Bristol. I've been to Manchester, I'd been to Liverpool as part of this, and now I'm going to be writing about all of them. Experiencing it on a tour is so much different than experiencing it as a visitor who just is there to travel, because you're more focused on the food and the music side of things, and it really narrows your focus. but in a really interesting way. And you get to kind of feel what is that cultural touchstone of the city. It's really fascinating.
I think having a focus is very helpful. It connects into the discipline side of the industry, which I think is overlooked by people who don't work in the industry. It's not just traveling and going on holiday. It's traveling and going on holiday with a very set purpose, with some quite strict time restraints, definitely strict budget restraints, and knowing that you need to get something out of it at the end.
Absolutely.
What do you find is your best way of maintaining discipline on the road when it's just up to you?
Well, the best way to do it is just to get up early, not drink late. There is a part of me for a guidebook that has to research the nightlife scene, but for the most part, I'm up at 6, 7 in the morning, and I'll not be back to the hotel room until 10 or 11 at night. Often I'm moving quite quickly between towns and cities, so I'm having to find a way of moving my stuff around as well, or storing my bag or whatever. So really, discipline is the name of the game. You're working for 15, 16 hours sometimes, whereas most people who go to Seville might go, oh, I'll check out this palace, and then I'll go to the cathedral, and that's going to be my day. I'll also have to see 3 other churches and a museum, and then try maybe a tapas at 3 different restaurants as well in between, and try basically cramming as much as you can in. It really is extraordinarily hard work, but it's the kind of work where at the end of the day you feel more energized and invigorated by it than exhausted. One of the things that I love about travel when I'm just a traveler is the openness. You leave your schedule open to be surprised by something that you discover there. As a travel writer, especially as a guidebook researcher, I don't get that luxury. I have to do this at this time, this at this time, this at this time, and it has to be done. Otherwise, I'm not going to see everything, and therefore I'm not able to write about it.
If people want to find your work, whether it's your writing or indeed your music, where can they find it?
I would go to paulrstafford, that's all one word, .com, Paul R. Stafford. That's my kind of main source of travel writing stuff. Or fourband.com, which is for the music side of things, and we're fourband on all the socials. And I'm Paul R. Stafford on all the socials, so whichever interests you, you can follow me on either or both of those.
Fantastic. Back to Andalusia. I am guessing, given the amount of time that you've spent there, you're now pretty proficient in Spanish.
Funnily enough, I wasn't very good the first time I was there, and then I went to Mexico and I learned Spanish when I was in Mexico, so I sound like I'm from Latin America, via Britain, of course.
If you can't speak Spanish and you're visiting Seville, are you going to be able to get by?
Yeah, it's quite an international city these days. There's been tourists there for many, many years, and so there's definitely a good proficiency in English. For me, one of the most important things whenever I visit anywhere, if I speak the language or not, is to learn a couple of choice local phrases that help not just as an icebreaker with locals, but it kind of helps tune you into the local language. So I've got 2 really useful phrases for you, and for anybody visiting, not just Seville, but Andalusia in general. So an example of maybe a utilitarian phrase would be ponme. So there's lots of ways for asking for something in a store or restaurant in Spain. You might typically learn dame, which is give me. Or if you're a little bit deeper into learning the language, you might say me gustaría, which is I would like. But in Andalusia, it's ponme, which is literally translated to put me, but it really means give me. So ponme una caña, por favor. Ponme una caña would be give me a beer, please. And if you want to be a little bit more colloquial, you can say porfa instead of por favor. So that's another way of saying please, but in a more casual environment. And it's actually used much more widely. Like I'll use porfa in Mexico, for example. And if you want to get right into the weeds of Andalusian slang, it's a favor, which is ARFAVO. And that's kind of like do me a favor. I think it derives from the phrase haz el favor, a favor. So you could say a favor, ponme una caña. And that would be a really Andalusian way of saying give me a beer, or I'd like a beer. It sounds almost like give me a beer is a bit direct, but that's how the Spanish works. It's not rude at all. It's just the usual way of using it. A really useful phrase that you could use that's very Andalusian is estoy flipando en colores. It's a really popular saying at the moment with young people especially. Flipar as a verb actually means to freak out. it would be understood throughout Spain. Estoy flipando en colores literally translated means I'm freaking out in colours, but it means I'm blown away by something. So it's something I think would be really useful for tourists because you're constantly encountering things that will make you flipar en colores because everything's amazing, everything's wonderful. So estoy flipando en colores is a wonderful phrase.
Talking of localisms, what about tipping? Is that a done thing?
Not really. It's not customary to tip in Andalusia or Spain in general. It's not expected. I always give about 10%. It's readily accepted when you do. Locals would tip for great service or something like that. If you've ever been in a Spanish tapas bar at the busiest point of the day, around 3 p.m. or 9 p.m, you will see people working with incredible efficiency. It's busy, it's crammed, there's so many things going on. Nobody writes anything down, they just do it. Very rarely in my entire experience in Spain has anyone forgotten anything that I've asked for. It's so incredible to watch, and I just always think that deserves a tip, man. Then you add to the top of that the heat that they're doing that in as well. Genuinely, I would say that the wait staff in Spain are like professional athletes in some way. The energy that they must put into doing a shift is incredible. Whilst you can pay for everything on card these days, a lot of the time they won't accept the tips on card, so it's useful to just have a little cash handy as well. It's becoming increasingly hard to find a free cash machine in Spain. Unicaja, they've got a green and white logo, Unicaja. That bank still, for me, is always a free money withdrawal. So look out for their cash machines. Then you should be able to get a little bit of cash out without having to pay €5 for the honour of doing so.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah, €5 to €10 is pretty customary now for most cash machines.
Wow, way to sting us.
Especially if you only want to take out like €50 or something. It's like, that's 10%.
That's 10% more. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's somewhere else I really want to talk about. You've name dropped it, but we've not yet gone there. If you're going to Seville, should you take a bit of time to go over to Granada?
Yes, you should. It's about 3 hours on a bus or the train. It's one of those funny ones where the bus and the train take about the same amount of time because usually if you're going to Granada from Seville, you'll change over in Cordoba. I'd say do it as a 2 nights away type of trip just because Granada, like Seville, demands time of you and you don't want to rush it. You really want to take your time to explore the different neighbourhoods. You know, one area of Seville that I haven't mentioned is Triana, which is the traditional Gitano area, the Romany area, where they had this old ceramic tradition going on, but also a lot of flamenco. And you wouldn't even get there if you were just there for a day or two in Seville. Same with Granada. You might head to the Alhambra, but that takes a full day to do properly. You really need a full day for the Alhambra, but it's a wonderful place. You want to be in the Albaicín, staying there, because that's a hill that looks out across a little valley to the Alhambra, which itself is on a hilltop. And a sunset with a balcony terrace, with a nice glass of sangria or, I don't know, a white wine, an Albarino or something from the north of Spain, is one of the most romantic, relaxing, thrilling evenings that you could possibly have anywhere in Spain. So Granada is well worth it for that.
Are there any other regional highlights that you think people should consider as either a day trip or a couple of nights if they're basing themselves in Seville?
We probably need a whole other podcast for me to go through all of them. I'll restrict it to kind of day trip stuff. Just out to the west of Seville is the old Roman city of Italica, one of the 4 probably biggest Roman cities in the Iberian Peninsula. It was the birthplace of Trajan, who was one of the great emperors who expanded the Roman Empire to its greatest extent. He was born in Seville. And then his successor, Hadrian, was also born in Italica. And obviously Hadrian is probably better known to British audiences especially because he's got his famed wall that crosses the north of England. So Italica is a great one. Today, you go there because it's got these beautiful mosaic floors that are still in situ, and it's got a wonderful amphitheatre. At one time, it could hold up to 30,000 people. Wonderful place to visit. Also in Santiponce as well, they have the Church of San Isidoro, which is a great old monastery where the first version of the Bible in Spanish was translated. San Isidore is the 5th century saint who was the first to translate the Bible into Latin from Hebrew. So there's a whole history there of translations of the Bible to make them more accessible to more people. And then if you go to the other side of the city, you have Carmona. And I like to think of Carmona as like a Seville in miniature that is often overlooked by a lot of people. There's the necropolis there, so a really regal, or certainly a wealthy family burial site on the edge of the city. And then you have beautiful Moorish walls, lots of beautiful old churches, a great museum with a lot of the old Roman artifacts, some good restaurants there as well.
The wrap-up, round-up, quick-fire finish is now ready for boarding.
What would you say is the top thing to see or do in Seville?
It's too obvious, I guess, but the Real Alcazar is incredible, and another place that you want to give at least half a day to. It really is the synthesis of all of the greatness of Seville as a destination, with the Mudéjar architecture and the history that is behind it. And the beautiful gardens as well are really amazing. I didn't even mention those before, but they're filled with ponds and peacocks and all sorts of wonderful things.
What is a tourist trap to avoid?
I would say get outside of the Barrio de Santa Cruz, which is the neighbourhood that immediately surrounds the Real Alcazar and the cathedral, because those are really tourist trap streets now. And they're kind of famed because they're like these higgledy-piggledy cobbled alleyways, and you just could get lost in them. But there's so much more of Seville that is exactly the same as that. So just go north of the cathedral instead, or towards the river, and you'll have a similar experience, and you can do all of that without the crowds.
What's your favourite time of year to visit?
April is a great time because you've got the scents, you've got all of these big events. I guess you get the shoulder season a lot as an answer to this, because it's often traditionally cheaper and there's fewer people. It really is flipped in Seville. They are really great times to visit, don't get me wrong, but they're also incredibly busy. And the prices are at their highest usually in the traditional shoulder seasons of spring and autumn. The best time for me, if you want to save money, is summer, because you get the streets at their quietest. It can be really hot, yeah, but if you structure your days around the hottest part of the day, then you can have a really great time in Seville still, but without the crowds and with really drastically lowered prices.
Do you have a book recommendation about the area?
I'm not going to plug my own guidebook, but it is out there. The Lonely Planet Guide to Andalusia. There's a book called Voz de Vieja, which means the voice of the elderly woman, by Elisa Victoria. It's a good book to read, written by a local person. It's a coming-of-age tale set after the 1992 Expo, which for me is a really interesting time in the history of Seville, where it was a city that had kind of relied on the currency of its ancient grandeur, then decided that it needed to have a more modern reason to be considered a great city. It had fallen a bit by the wayside, and the Expo was this attempt to bring the world's attention back to Seville.
It sounds like a great book, sort of melancholic and nostalgic, but also showcasing real places. And I love the English translation as well. It's Old Lady Voice, all in one word, Old Lady Voice by Elisa Victoria. What's a good food or drink that we should try in Seville?
I would say salmorejo. It's one that you can have regardless of your dietary preferences. It's really delicious. It's just a simple dish. Tomato, garlic, olive oil, wonderful. Especially in the summer, it's really, really nice to have because it's served cold.
And if you wanted to take home an authentic souvenir from Seville, what would you suggest we look for?
Seville is still a place known for its ceramic tiles. So I mentioned Triana before. This used to be the kind of centre for all ceramic tile production in all of Spain. They're known as Azulejos. The tiles themselves had more of a functional role in that they would line rooms and patios to keep them cool in the summer. But at some point along the way, primarily in the 18th century and the 17th century, they became decorative. And so they're really beautiful, ornate tiles. There's one store called Ceramica 1920, which is right in the heart of Triana. It's right next to the ceramics museum that fills an old ceramics factory. And that's a really good place to get some locally made tiles.
Paul Stafford, travel writer and sometime musician. Thank you so much for unlocking Seville for us.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Well, what a fascinating part of Spain. Thanks again so much to Paul Stafford there for sharing it with us. Your camera will be full of the most amazing magazine quality pictures after a trip to Seville and, of course, all of those day trips in the wider Andalusia area. Hope you really enjoyed this episode. If you did, please share it on with somebody else who you'd like to go travelling with. And make sure you're following the Destination Unlocked podcast wherever you're currently listening so that you can easily find us again next time you want to go armchair travelling somewhere wonderful. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.